The Blackhearts awoke after a much-needed rest, though not all of them were entirely refreshed. Horin and Gideon looked visibly hungover, their faces pale and drawn, while Faraday seemed oddly detached, sitting quietly at the table, mechanically eating toast as though his mind were miles away. Morven, ever the vigilant caretaker of the warehouse, appeared with a remedy for their sorry state. He presented them with a concoction, thick, tomato-based, and laced with what was unmistakably vodka. Gideon and Horin took the offered drinks with gratitude, downing them quickly in hopes of relief from their throbbing headaches. Gideon, still feeling grimy, summoned some of the warehouse kobolds to draw him a bath. The small creatures struggled with the task, bringing only a lukewarm basin of water and some rags, but it was enough to serve its purpose. After a simple breakfast, the group turned their thoughts to their next objective, returning to the Fairweather estate to search for any evidence that might link Lord Fairweather and Renfield to the Kohaku Clan and the doppelgangers. They decided to avoid the main entrance and the staff, opting instead to enter through the tradesman's entrance at the back of the estate. Once inside, they sought out Swiftwind, the chef, hoping to gather some information before heading upstairs. Gideon and Aurelian separated from the others, making their way up through the servants' wing, intending to go unnoticed. However, they paused at the entrance to the main mansion, bickering in hushed tones over how best to deal with the guards they were sure to encounter. Meanwhile, Faraday, Jacob, and Horin approached the kitchen, where they found Swiftwind barking orders at his staff. Upon questioning, Swiftwind confirmed that neither Renfield nor Lord Fairweather had returned to the estate. When they asked after Lady de la Vega, the kitchen staff pointed them towards the Owl guest suite, though none seemed to know much about her. Back upstairs, Gideon squabbling with Aurelian drew the attention of a guard. Thinking quickly, Gideon spun a tale of being an agent of Force Grey, conducting a surprise security inspection. The guard, flustered and nervous, fell for the story and sheepishly escorted Gideon to Fairweather's office. At the same time, Jacob, Faraday, and Horin encountered a similar issue as they approached the guest suites. Jacob, exuding an air of authority, breezed past the guard, pretending to chastise his servants for leading him through the servants' wing. The ruse worked, and they continued on their way unimpeded. In the Owl suite, they found nothing of note. Faraday, uncharacteristically bored, seemed more interested in the Serpent staff he carried, twirling it idly as the others searched. Jacob and Horin couldn't help but notice a change in Faraday's demeanor, his speech more eloquent, his posture more refined. When they questioned him, he mumbled something about toast, but Jacob suspected it was actually Balthazar speaking through him. Meanwhile, Gideon and Aurelian conducted a thorough search of Fairweather's office. It was clear that Force Grey had already taken anything overtly incriminating, but Aurelian and Gideon's persistence paid off when he discovered a secret compartment in Renfield's desk. Inside was a short note, dated several days ago, that simply read, "Meet at the Serpent's Den." Rejoining the others, they pooled their knowledge, trying to decipher the note's meaning, with some bardic inspiration from Aurelian. The only tenuous lead they had was a Netherese herbalist shop on Adder Lane called the Verdant Coil. With no other options, they decided to investigate. Faraday, still uninterested, declared he was off to practice his magic and strode away, leaving the rest to handle the investigation. At the Verdant Coil, they were met by an elderly Netherese man with spectacles and a long beard, who introduced himself as Mr. Shin. Suspicious of doppelganger activity, they purchased some widow's wort and asked if others had done the same. Mr. Shin seemed genuine in his claim that no one really bought the herb, showing them a sample that appeared old and untouched. Gideon, sensing an opportunity, gently proffered some coin and inquired about the Serpent's Den. Mr. Shin claimed ignorance, but the Blackhearts noticed him subtly pull a lever on one of the back shelves. Moments later, several Kohaku Clan members entered the shop and locked the door. The Blackhearts attempted to de-escalate, mentioning their connection to Medgul, which gave the thugs pause. However, when Jacob threatened them with Force Grey, the situation escalated into violence. Horin was the first to be struck, trading vicious blows with the leader before shadow slipping behind a curtain in the back. He noted that Mr. Shin had vanished. The leader then turned his attention to Jacob, while Gideon tore a shelf from the wall and used it to pin the 3 other Kohaku members against the front door. Aurelian's voice from the sword goaded Gideon, urging him to strike killing blows as Gideon struggled to keep the Kohaku pinned. One of the thugs broke free, rushing forward to engage Jacob, leaving Gideon to tackle the other 2, bursting through the door and window onto the street. Faraday, who had been heading back, saw the commotion and unleashed an arrow at one thug, while Gideon struck him with the pommel of Blackheart, knocking him unconscious, much to Aurelian's frustration. Inside, Jacob took several blows, but held his ground, summoning his spiritual weapon to aid him. Horin, seeing Jacob in danger, grabbed a small jar with unusual symbols from the herbalist's shop and shattered it over the leader's head. The man's face began to bubble as his right eye dissolved, and he screamed in agony before slicing his own innards open. As Gideon dragged his captive back inside, the remaining Kohaku thug inexplicably took his own life in the same manner as the leader, leaving the shop eerily silent. Interrogating their captive, Kenji-san, they learned that the Serpent's Den was a secret Kohaku base. Kenji-san revealed that the deceased leader was Hiro-san, who had been protecting their interests. The entrance to the Serpent's Den was hidden beneath a display counter in the shop. Gideon, much to Horin's dismay, let Kenji-san go, and the man quickly fled rather than taking his own life. The Blackhearts took Hiro-san's ornate blade before descending into the darkness beneath the counter. As they did, Horin reached for Mr. Shin's herbalist book, only to hear the aged man's voice behind him, insisting he leave it and help clean up, just as the sound of watchmen's whistles echoed in the distance.